Hello and welcome back. I'm Benjamin Williams, and today we're going to be doing another Boson NetSim lab. Today we're in the infrastructure section within Boson, and we're going to be doing spanning tree number 1. So we're going to be working with STP today. So our objective is to learn to configure and observe spanning tree protocol (STP). Configure the appropriate settings on router 1, switch 2, switch 3, PC1, and PC2. So this is our topology. We have our router and our switch number 1. We have switch number 2 and switch number 3. And then we have our PC1 connected to switch 2 and our PC2 connected to switch 3. Looks like if the PC right here, PC1, it has two ways to get out to router 1. It could go either the Fast Ethernet 02 interface, or it can go to Fast Ethernet 01 interface to switch 3 and then up to switch 1. So if one of these links breaks, switch 2 and switch 3 will still have a path to get to switch 1. So let's go ahead and go down to our commands. We've read through all of our commands in the descriptions. So let's keep on going. We're going to be doing all of our configurations down here at the bottom as we usually do. We're going to keep our lab topology up here in the top left. And we're going to be doing all of our configuration instructions top right. So let's go ahead and get into our lab task. It says task 1, configure VLANs. It says this task involves configuring switches so that PC1 and PC2 are on VLAN number 3. So it says verify that the current IP configurations on PC1 and PC2 match the IP configurations listed in the IP address table. So let's pull up PC1 and PC2. Okay, this is PC1. Let's do an IP config /all. And right here we can see that its IP address is 192.168.1.101. If we look right here, PC's IP address is supposed to be that. Its subnet mask is supposed to be a /24, which it is. And its default gateway is 192.168.100.1, which we see right here. So everything looks to be correct. That's what we want to see. Looks like it is a Realtek family PC. We can see its MAC address right here. But let's go ahead and move on to PC2. Do the same thing over here. Let's give it IP config /all. And we can see the same thing right here. It has an IP address of 192.168.100.102. So that's what we want to see. It has a /24 subnet mask, which is what we want to see. And its default gateway is 192.168.1.100. So everything here looks correct. So it says verify connectivity by pinging from PC1 to PC2. So the ping should be successful. And yes, it should be. They're on the same subnet. So let's do a ping to 192.168.100.102. And we can see we're getting replies, so that's perfect. All right, let's move on to step 3. It says configure switch 1 with the appropriate host name. So let's move over to switch number 1. Okay, let's do an enable. Let's do a host name. Oh, maybe I need to go into global config, and let's do a host name of switch 1. Perfect. Okay, so now we can see that our switch is now named switch 1, which is what we want to see. All right, it says on switch 1, configure the fast Ethernet 01, 02, and 03 as trunk ports and create VLAN number 3. So on switch number 1, let's go into interface range. Let's do fast Ethernet 01 through 3. Okay, and it says it wants these to be trunk port. So let's do a switch port trunk. Let's do a switch port mode. Let's do a switch port encapsulation. Okay, hold on. Why am I getting mixed up here? So switch port, having a little brain freeze. Switch port mode trunk. I think, yep, that's what we want. And let's do switch port trunk encapsulation .1Q. So we have .1Q trucking. Okay, and let's create VLAN number 3. So let's do a exit, and let's do VLAN 3. And do we need to name this VLAN? No, so let's just do a VLAN number 3. Let's do that one more time because it didn't come up saying that it was created. Okay, there it is. It's not created. Let's do a do show VLAN brief just to confirm. Okay, that's perfect. And let's do a do show interfaces trunk. And we can see that our fast Ethernet 0, 1 through 3 is now in trunking mode and is using 802.1q, which is what we want to see. So perfect. All right. So let's go to step number 5. It says configure switch 2 with the appropriate host name, create VLAN 3, and add fast Ethernet 04 to the VLAN 3 VLAN. So let's go over to switch 2. All right, let's do an enable. Let's do a configure terminal. Let's do an host name of switch 2. Perfect. Now we can see that it has the name switch 2. Create VLAN number 3. So let's do a do show VLAN brief, because I don't know if it propagated through the network through VTP. So we do have already VLAN number 3 on this switch because it was distributed over to switch number 2 via VTP. So we don't even have to create the VLAN because it's already in our VLAN database. So let's do the interface fast Ethernet. Well, let me do is I just need to do an interface fast Ethernet 04. I was about to do an interface range command, but we don't need to do that. All right, interface 04, and let's do a switch port mode access, because that is going to, if we look at switch to the fast Ethernet 04 is going to be an access layer switch, and it's going to, yeah, it's going to be an access layer switch. So let's do a switch port mode access. And let's do a access. I think you could do an access. Okay, let's do a, we did switch port mode access. Let's do switch port access VLAN 3. That's what we want. Switch port access VLAN 3. All right. So let's go to step number 6. It says on switch 2, configure the fast Ethernet 01 and 02 as trunk ports. So let's go exit. Let's go into interface range, fast Ethernet 01 to 2. All right. And let's do a switch port mode trunk. And let's do a switch port trunk encapsulation .1q. Perfect. All right. Let's go over to step 7. Configure switch 3 with the appropriate host name, create VLAN number 3, and add the fast Ethernet 04 to VLAN number 3. So let's load up switch 3. Okay, we're on switch 3 now. Let's do an enable. Let's do a configure terminal. Let's do a host name of switch 3. Perfect. Now we can see the name switch 3. All right. It says create VLAN number 3. Let's do a do show VLAN brief. We already have the VLAN number 3 VLAN created over here via VTP. It was propagated throughout the network. So let's do interface fast Ethernet 04. And let's do a switch port mode access. Let's do a switch port access VLAN 3. Perfect. Alrighty. And then it says on switch 3, configure the fast Ethernet 01 and 03 as trunk ports. So let's do an exit. Let's do an interface range fast Ethernet 01. Well, it says interface 01 and 3. So we can't do a range here. We're just going to do it. We have to do it by interface. So let's do an interface 01 first. Let's do a switch port. Switch. Some reason my keystrokes are not registering sometimes. Switch port access. Or switch port trunk, switch port mode trunk. Got my train of thought messed up. And switch port trunk encapsulation .1Q. All right, now let's do an interface fast Ethernet 03 and give these same commands. Let's do a switch port mode trunk and a switch port trunk encapsulation .1Q. Perfect. Now it says verify the configuration by pinging from PC1 to PC2. So hopefully we configured everything correctly. Let's do an up here and see if we can still ping and we're getting replies. So it looks like we configured everything correctly. Alrighty, so that was step number 9. So we just did that. All right, it says task number 2, configure the router. This task involves configuring the router for basic network connectivity with the PCs. So it says on router 1, configure the appropriate host name. So let's go over to R1. Let's give it enable. Let's give it configure terminal. Let's give a host name of router 3. Oh, router 1. Sorry. Not router 3. We want router 1. Okay. Let's go to step number 2. It says on router 1, configure the fast Ethernet 00 interface with the appropriate IP address and subnet mask. Refer to the IP address table. Configure the interface with 802.1q encapsulation for VLAN number 3 and enable the interface. Okay, so first, we know we need to do the fast Ethernet 00 interface. So let me go up to the address table, and it wants us to configure an IP address of 192.168.100.1. So let's go into interface, fast Ethernet 00. Let's do an IP address of 192.168.100.1. Wants us to do a /24 subnet mask, so 255.255.255.0. Perfect. Okay. Now, okay, hold on. I don't know if I did that right. Okay, yeah, we did that right. Don't know why I got a brain freeze there. Where we at? Okay, so we just did the IP address and subnet mask. So that was good. All right, it wants us to configure the interface with 802.1q encapsulation for VLAN number 3. So let's do an encapsulation. Can we do an encapsulation? Yep. Encapsulation.1q. Let's do a VLAN number 3. Okay, VLAN. Or do we just put the VLAN? Okay, we just put the VLAN identifier. So like that. Okay, and enable the interface. Let's do a no shut to bring it up. And it looks like we are up. So it says verify the configuration by pinging from router 1 to PC1. So in PC2, both pings should succeed. So let's do a do ping 192.168.100.101. So we're not able to ping. Okay, so maybe that was art. Okay, yep, so that was definitely art. I'm not sure why it took so long for the art reply to come back. But eventually we did, we're getting our successfuls now. So that's perfect. We are able to ping PC number 1. Let's do ping 192.168.100.102.102. Oh, I didn't do the do. Let me put do in front of the ping. Do ping. And we are able to ping PC2 as well. So task number 3, it says observe spanning tree. So it says on switch 3, set the priority for VLAN 3 to 0 to ensure it is the root bridge. Wait approximately 60 seconds for the network to update. So let's go over to switch number 3. And it wants us to configure switch 3 as the root bridge. So let's go ahead and do that now. Let's do an exit. and let's do a spanning tree. Let's do VLAN 3. Let's give a priority, and let's give a priority of 0. So it does become the root bridge. Let's do a do show spanning tree. And for VLAN number 3, we can see our ports are now in the listening state. They got to go through the learning state for another 15 seconds, and then they will go into the forwarding state. That's to prevent loops. So this is the root bridge as we wanted it to be. So now we're just waiting for the network to converge and for spanning tree to go through the different states that it has to go through. So let's just wait a couple of seconds. Where we at now? Okay, so we're now in the forwarding state, and we see that this is the root bridge. We're in the forwarding state for all of our interfaces, which is good. So it says issue the show spanning tree VLAN number 3 command on switch number 1, switch 2, and switch 3. Use the output to answer the following questions. So let me get my iPad out so we can answer these questions and write them down as we go. So let's create a new tab on my iPad. Have some notes that I'm doing as I'm studying for my CCNP as well with the Enterprise book. I read that book almost every day. Well, I do read it every day, trying to get past the CCNP Encore studies. But let's do spanning tree right here. Spanning tree notes lab. Let's do a curate. Okay, perfect. So let's start out with A up here. Alrighty. So let me put my iPad right there out of the way, kind of. Okay. So put my pencil down. All right. So it says issue the show spanning tree. So let's go to switch 1 first. And let's do a end, and let's do a show spanning tree VLAN 3. Okay. Let's do the same thing on switch 2. Let's do an end. Let's do a show spanning tree VLAN 3. And same thing on switch 3. Let's do a end show spanning tree VLAN 3. All right. So it says, what is the MAC address of the root bridge for VLAN number 3? Now, if we look right here, we can see that switch 3 is the root bridge, and here here is the MAC address. So it's 00C 1380 3538. So let's write that down for number 1. So 000C 1380 3538. So that is the answer for question number A. Well, letter A, I should say. So we just wrote that down. Okay, what spanning tree protocol is being used on these switches? So we can see that we're using PVST, so per VLAN spanning tree. So every VLAN will have its own spanning tree logic, and it can have different root bridges. So you can load balance traffic. So PVST is, good to use. You also have MST, you have PVST plus, you have regular spanning tree. So you have different variants out there, but in this lab right here, we're using PVST, or per VLAN spanning tree. So each VLAN will have its own spanning tree config. So it says, what switch is the root bridge? For number C, or for letter C, I keep saying number. But the switch number 3 is the root bridge, and we can see that right here. It says this is the root bridge, and we're on switch 3. So let me put that down for C. Let's put switch 3. Alrighty. All right, put that back down. What is the priority of the root bridge? The priority of the root bridge is 3. And we know that because we configured it for a priority of 0. But you have to add the actual number of the VLAN to the priority. So if you're dealing with VLAN number 3 and your priority is 0, you have to automatically add 3 for the VLAN, so you get a priority of 3. So yeah, the priority of the root bridge is 3. And let's go to E. It says, what port on what device is in the blocking state? So let's take a look. And we can see that fast Ethernet 02 interface on switch number 2 is in the blocking state. So if we go over to switch 2, if we're looking at the topology and we look at the fast Ethernet 02, this is in a blocking state. And is using this port right here to reach the root bridge, which is switch 3. So let's go ahead and answer that. We can see that it is the fast Ethernet 02 on switch 2. All right, and let's check our answers with Boson before we exit out of this video and then grade our work as well. So we can see right here for A, this is the MAC address of switch A, or switch number 1, I should say. So that's right. For B, we can see that the spanning tree that is running is per VLAN spanning tree protocol, which I said. So PVST for B. C is saying switch 3 is our root bridge, which is what we had. So that is correct. D is saying our priority is 3, which right here says priority of 3, which we've seen in our output as well. So D is correct. And the fast Ethernet 02 on switch 2 is in the blocking state. And that's what we have for E as well. So let's go ahead and grade our lab. Let's make sure all of our commands were correct. And they were. So thank you guys for watching this one. See you in the next one.